Pat. All
Yeah.
right, so I have been a professional macro close-up photographer for 21 years, making a living doing this, and it's been a blast. And a lot of articles published in magazines, spoke at lots of conferences all over the country, sponsored by Tamron, Fuji at one time, and ran workshops all over the country, 3-day macro boot camps, even up to Anchorage, Alaska. Um, Luckily, I can stay home now and do them on Zoom, which has been a only benefit of the COVID was the Zoom program. Everybody learned how to do it. All right, so my program they asked me to do tonight is on creative flower photography. I think I spoke to your club before, um, and that was one on the basics of close-up macro photography. This one was be more specific just to creative ways to photograph flowers. So the equipment for flower photography, real basic, obviously. I use a Fuji X-T30 Mark II. It's a cheap camera, $899, and uh, went mirrorless about 2 years ago because a lot of the people in my workshops were using mirrorless systems. And they did ask me questions. I go, I don't understand your camera yet, so I figured I might as well learn a little bit about the mirrorless systems. Um, so I'm using the XT30 Mark II, and I don't use a macro lens anymore. I'm using a zoom lens, which has what they call macro capabilities, not true macro in the sense, but I'm not really a true macro photographer. I'm a close-up photographer. So I shoot little larger areas. So zoom lenses work perfect for me. I'm using the 18 to 400, which is shown here. That's on my DSLR. I have a Nikon 7500 that I occasionally use, not very often since I've been going mirrorless. Um, but the 18 to 300 is what I'm using with my mirrorless system. And this was actually shot a few years back with the 18 to 400 on the D7500. And so you can see how close I can get in with that lens. I can actually shoot as small as an inch and a half by 2.5 inches. That's a pretty small area. 90% of what I photograph is larger areas than an inch and a half by 2.5 inch. So I don't really need a macro lens. I can get by with the zoom. And most all your zooms nowadays have that ability to focus in very close to your subjects. It's not like the old zooms back in the old days where you couldn't get in real close to shoot like that. But all the new zoom lenses that have been coming out for the last few years all have the ability to get in real close to their subjects. So you have that ability to shoot your wide angle for like landscapes, telephoto. If you need to reach out, or maybe you do a little wildlife photography, and then you can also do close-up photography with these lenses. They're amazing. Tripod, obviously, some people try to handhold. I can't. I'm too shaky. So I'm on a tripod 100% of the time. I will say that I've taught thousands of people over the 20 some years in workshops, and it's almost 100% of the people that show up to a workshop has a tripod. So I'm pretty sure most of y'all have a tripod that you would use for this. Diffuser, that is one of the accessories that we use that is as important as that camera, the lens, and the tripod in your head. It is as important. You have to have this when you go out to shoot flowers. Now, this is a Dame's rocket flower. Um, Look at the top portion there. The petals look kind of pink, but they're not supposed to be pink. They're actually supposed to be purple. Now, you may think that, well, maybe you shot on a sunny day, a little washed out color from some harsh light. No, this was shot on a cloudy day. So even on a cloudy day, we will get enough intensity of light coming off those clouds and also reflection off those clouds that anything that's running kind of parallel to those clouds can wash out those colors. So what you need to do is get yourself a 12-inch diffuser. It's the only size that I've used in the 20 some years, and they do make a couple other larger sizes of 20-inch and a 22-inch. I like the 12-inch. I generally shoot small areas, so the 12 works just fine. Now, once I put the 12-inch diffuser directly over top of that Dame's rocket flower you just saw, I can get the color back to the natural color it's supposed to be. That is the purple it should be. So you can see the image on the left, that's no diffuser. Image on the right with the diffuser directly over top. So again, this is a cloudy day when this has happened. See, most people would assume cloudy day. You already got a big diffuser up there, the clouds. What? You can still get, again, a lot of intensity of light coming off and reflection off those clouds. Now, on that same cloudy day, I'm walking down a pathway and I see this leaf here. And you can see the top of the leaf, the color is washed out. Front of the leaf retains it because the top part is running parallel to the clouds. The front part is 90 degrees to the clouds, and that retains its color. So it's those areas, like I say, that are washed out that are running parallel to the clouds. Once I put the diffuser over top, you can see I can bring the color back on the top. Now the color is not quite as dark on the top as it is on the front of the leaf, but at least there's color there that I can work with when I go into post-processing. I can darken down that top to match up with the front. But if all I had to work with is that image on the left, there's no color there, so it'd be difficult. I'd have to somehow put some color back in there. So very simple tool. And again, that's a cloudy day. A sunny day, I'm diffusing my subjects 100% of the time. I never let sunlight directly hit my subjects. Always diffusing my subjects and giving soft light on it. So you're wondering, do you have to hold this? You could hold it like you saw me holding it there in that one image, but you could get yourself a clamp. Clamp has a large clamp on the left. You can see a flexible tubing, smaller clamp on the right. And when you're in real close shooting to your flower, you could attach it to the leg of the tripod, as you can see right here. And on the other end, it'll hold your diffuser for you. And then you just have to work the camera. You don't have to worry about holding the diffuser. But let's say you're using a lens that puts you a little farther away from that flower, maybe 3 feet away. Um, Attach it to the leg of the tripod, it's not going to have enough reach to put that diffuser over top of that flower. So Wimberly, the manufacturer of the plant, came up with a stake system. So on the right side, that's a hollow plastic tube. On the left is a screwdriver. That screwdriver is inserted up into that tube. And when you want to make it into a stake, you pull the screwdriver out, reverse it, put the handle in first, and the shaft of the screwdriver becomes the stake. So then you can stake it next to your flower, take the clamp off the tripod leg, attach it to the stake, and now it's holding your diffuser for you, and you are independent of it. So you can move as far back as you want, left, right, whatever you want, and you don't have to worry about that diffuser being held. All right, now on their website, they show that you could stake next to your flower and then clamp on the stem of the flower. Now, let's say it's a little breezy that day when you're out there shooting and you want to steady that flower. You could actually clamp, stake next to it and then clamp on the stem. And the inside of that clamp has foam. There's foam in there. So when you clamp onto the stem, it doesn't cause any damage to the stem of the flower. Now, I started 20 some years ago. Like I say, been doing this full time for 21 years, but it was about 3 years prior to that when I actually started photographing. And the nice thing about doing flower photography is you can do it in your house. Like right now, way too cold, obviously nothing to shoot outside, so we can shoot in our home. What I found in my home is the brightest place for natural light is in my foyer in front of my house. And there's a huge window at the second level, as you can see that big window up there, and that floods that stairway with beautiful natural light. So that is the best place for using natural light to photograph my subjects. So that's why I'm shooting on stairs. Now, when I first started, I was using black backgrounds because obviously I don't want stairs as the background. So I was using black backgrounds and white backgrounds. And all my flower photography was coming out with black and white backgrounds, and it started to look a little too artsy. You know, I wanted something that looked more natural, like maybe I shot it out in the field with some green grass behind it. So I started to make my own backgrounds from things in nature that I would photograph. So you can see here, I've got my tulip set up, got my background. That's a image that I photographed out in nature, and I printed it, and I use that as my background so I don't have to deal with the stairs as a background. So how I do this, and I would recommend if you have a macro lens, you want to use your macro lens for this rather than say your zoom lens, because the macro lens works a lot better. Now I have my tripod set up, got my camera, my lens, my macro lens, and you want to make sure that your f-stop, you're shooting at the smallest f-stop number. So that could be 2.8, could be 3.5, whatever your smallest number on that macro lens is. You'll also want to be manually focusing, okay? No autofocus here. You want to be manually focusing. Now this is some grass that I've focused on. where I'm set up there. I focus on this grass, and this is what it looks like in focus. Now, you know that once you get that subject in focus, and you have that focusing ring on your lens, if you take that focusing ring and you slightly move it to the left or slightly to the right of the focus point, that subject starts to go soft or out of focus. So you want to do is just rotate that lens to the right side, quite a ways, and then rotate it past the focus point to the left. On my lens, it works best when I go to the left side. And as I'm rotating that focusing ring away from that focus point, I can watch through my viewfinder that subject is starting to go out of focus, more, and then to a solid color. I mean, it goes completely out of focus to a solid color. I photograph it and I end up with that right there. So that grass that you just saw, that grass right there with the lens taken completely out of focus will produce that natural green. So I can use that as a background behind my flowers when I'm shooting indoors and give it a look like I shot out in front of some grass and blurred out that background behind my subject. Now, let's say that you're looking at that solid color. You're thinking, well, I'd like to leave a little bit of texture, a little bit of blotchiness in there. So when you're taking it out of focus, just don't take it to a solid color. Take it to where you leave a little bit of detail in there and you'll end up with something like that. So you get a little bit of detail in there, a little bit of blotchiness. So maybe you think that looks more natural than just a solid color, right? You also want to photograph, a variety of different subjects. Usually flowers make the best because there's a lot of colors in especially in botanical gardens where they have flower beds. You just take them out of focus. And this one was shot out in a field where there was little blue flowers and yellow flowers, and I just took it out of focus, left a little bit of detail in there. All right. And then just a solid blue color of some flowers I shot. So you want to have a variety of different colors. And when you're shooting your flowers indoors, then you can look at the color of the flower and maybe add some kind of a complementary color to the background. Now, if you're going to print these out yourself, you'd want to go and buy a matte paper. Matte paper doesn't have any sheen on it. You don't want any glossy papers. You don't want any lusters, semi-gloss, any of those. You want to have a matte paper that has no sheen on it, because with the glare on there, you put it behind your subject, if the light hits it just right, could cause a little washed out look on there. Could it be a haze on there from the glare of the sheen? So make sure you're using a matte paper. If you're going to have them printed by somebody, hopefully they have matte papers they can print on. You'll also want to pick up some mat board or foam core or cardboard at one of your local hobby stores. You'll want that because you'll want to put that as a backing to the print. So you don't have this floppy print. You want to stiffen it up with some kind of a backboard. So mat board works, foam core, which is what they use on the back of prints when they frame them, or cardboard. Then you want to go to Home Depot, Lowe's, Menards, any of those places, home place where they have a carpet section in the store, and look for some carpet tape. Buy a roll of the carpet tape. It's got adhesive on both sides of the tape. So you'll cut your backboard, same size as your print, lay it on the table, and then I cut 4 strips and put across and attach it to the backboard. And then you'll pull off this section here that exposes the adhesive on these 4. And then you can lay your print right on top of that. It'll stick forever, never come off. Works great. So clutter is the #1 problem that we have. Well, 2 problems, wind and clutter, but clutter is a big problem because when we're out there shooting in the field, I found this pair of coneflowers here to the right. I really like the coneflowers, the composition, but look at the clutter that I have to deal with back there. That's a mess. And clutter will just really, really ruin your image. It takes away from a beautiful subject, causes all kinds of chaos in there. And that's a big problem with close-up photography and flower photography, is always cluttered when we shoot. Here's some prairie coneflowers growing in this thick cover. Again, any 1 or 2 I want to shoot, I'm going to have massive clutter directly behind it, within inches of it. So that's a big problem. And then in botanical gardens, same issue with the botanical garden. Everything is so closely packed together that anything you want to photograph, you are going to have maybe a couple different subjects, types of subjects directly behind your flower, or just plain clutter back there that's going to mess up your image. So I have a farm near my house that's a flower farm, and they have acreage of sunflowers, and they have rows and rows of flowers that people can come in there and pay to cut down and It's a really, really nice place where they allow photographers to come in and photograph the flowers, and they charge you like $5, which is like totally ridiculously low. So I go there once a year and shoot and have a fun time. But as you can see behind me, those rows, they are very tightly packed together, those flowers. So what I learned through my indoor shooting is that I had to come up with a background to eliminate the stairs or and whatever you're shooting in your home, any place you're shooting, you got to have a background. And it dawned on me a few years back that why am I not using these backgrounds that I'm using indoors? Why am I not using them outdoors to eliminate the problem of the clutter? So when I go out to shoot, I find the flowers I want to photograph, I stick my background behind it, and I don't have any issues now with a background. I have eliminated the problem with clutters by using backgrounds behind my subjects. That makes life so much easier for flower photography. So I do this workshop on Madeline Island in June every year, and I'm there with three other instructors, Kathleen Clemens, Jackie Kramer, and Andrea Gelect out of the Netherlands. We do a four instructor workshop there. And so there's a lady here in my class last June, and she's holding her background behind the flowers. Here's another pair of ladies that they found a nice composition and they've used the background to clean up that background. As you can see, you'd have a tree trunk back there and other things going on. This is what it looks like when they get done. They get these beautiful compositions of flowers and they get a nice clean background behind their subject. So this is basically what I'm doing. I'm finding a good subject to shoot, something I like, what looks good, putting a background behind it and cropping it out in post-processing. And I'm not dealing with that background clutter, and it makes life so much easier doing it this way. Backgrounds, I usually frame up larger areas than what I'm going to shoot, and I know what I'm going to crop. So in this case here, I knew I was going to crop just below that bottom flower here. So I just needed to make sure my background covered that area, and then I cropped it out in post-processing what I wanted. Same with this one here. Just make sure I got the background down far enough where I'm going to crop it. I've got this leaf here and a leaf here, but I can clone that out in post-processing. End up with that right there. So this is so much easier than having to deal with all that clutter. Lily of the Valleys in the springtime, we've got some lily of the valley growing in the woods near my house. And as you can see, I've got my background there, but look what's holding my background. Yeah, that's the plamp. Remember the plamp for holding your diffuser? Now it's got a second purpose. You use it for holding your backgrounds. So I only needed to clean up a little area in this image right here. See, so I got a nice little group of flowers right here. I got my nice leaves here, and I just needed to clean this area right up in here with that background. I use them in botanical gardens. I have never had any issues with anybody, saying, hey, you can't do that. But I always make sure I'm very respectful not to touch any plants with that thing. I'll find flowers that I want to photograph and I want to make sure that I can get my background behind it without touching any of the plants or the leaves or anything around it. And if they see you that you're being careful not to touch anything, they are okay with it. I've never had anybody in all the years I've been doing this say I couldn't do that. But if you start banging those plants around with that thing, to get in behind a flower or something and moving plants around, they're going to say something. So just be careful if you're going to use them in botanical gardens. Print sizes, I use an 8.5 by 11, which doesn't sound very big, but remember, I'm not shooting very large areas. Most of my flowers are smaller flowers. So an 8.5 by 11 works really well. Now, I do use a larger one for those lupin that you saw on Madeline Island. There are some big, tall flowers, and so I will use a much bigger background for those. But most of what I use is an 8.5 by 11. And the backpack, as you can see there, I'm sliding that into that backpack because backpacks nowadays, they have an opening there to put a laptop in there, a notebook, iPad, stuff like that. So that works perfect for sliding my backgrounds into there, and that will hold an 8.5 by 11 on that backpack. If you have a larger backpack, you could use larger backgrounds. Natural backgrounds. Let's say that you come into a situation where you have this really great flower, but there's also a natural background behind it that's also looks really good. And that would work out pretty nice too. I've got lots of great shots of flowers with natural backgrounds behind them. This is not a good shot of a flower with a natural background. That background is pretty bad. It's got multiple subjects back there. There's holes all over the place, and it's just not a very nice looking background. It's too chaotic and crazy. What we want to do is we want to find a consistent background of a single subject, okay? So I've got this beautiful lupin here, and right directly behind it is this really nice group of ferns. So my background is all ferns. So it's not multiple subjects behind it. There's not two or three different types of subjects behind it. It's all a single subject of ferns. And that's what you're looking for in a natural background. All right, here's another lupin with birch tree, a pair of birch trees behind it. So the birch trees become the single subject behind the lupin. And here's another tree that I found that was directly behind these lupins that were growing here. They're kind of angled down right in front of that tree, and all I did was just photograph them in front of that tree trunk. So the tree trunk becomes a single subject behind it, not multiple subjects. And this is a little trillium I found that was growing in front of this decayed tree trunk that was laying on the ground. The tree trunk becomes the background, natural background. Again, single subject background. This is a bunchberry flower shot on Madeline Island, and you can see it grew right through this little mossy stuff, this little mossy ferny type stuff, and that becomes the background, single subject. Same with this bunchberries growing at the base of a tree trunk. Tree trunk becomes the single subject background. This was an interesting shot with the bunchberry where I found this old decayed tree trunk that it kind of fell over and the tree fell apart. And this little guy's grown right at the base of that tree trunk. So the tree trunk becomes the background. And this one here is these are some daisies that was shot at a botanical garden in Michigan here. And I don't know what that is in the background, but it's a pretty cool background for it. And this one was an old tree trunk that was cut down. Tree had a disease. They cut it down at the park, and the tree cracked open from years of laying there. And these are knapweed flowers that seeds got down into this crack down here, and the knapweed grew right out of that crack. So this tree trunk becomes a very interesting background for that flower. But if you notice, all these natural backgrounds are single subjects, not multiple subjects. Because once you start putting multiple subjects in there, the viewer is going to go, well, what is the subject here? You got five different things or four different things. Here we just have the main flowers in the foreground and a single subject background. Cactuses are really good too. You get the flowers and you get the single subject of the cactus behind the flower. So boring flower photography, all right. How would a beginning photographer compose a flower photo? So if you gave a camera to somebody that never photographed a flower before in their life and say, here's a camera, go out and photograph a flower and let's see what you come up with. Basically, what you would see is this right here. You would see that flower directly in the center of the frame, right in the middle of the frame. And you would see that clutter in the background, all that massive clutter there. And they would probably come back and look at that and think they did a pretty good job. But we would know better. We would know that that's not a good image. You are all probably thinking, yeah, you're more experienced and you would know better than that. So you would photograph that flower with the flower head in the top third of the frame because see, you're thinking in terms of rules, right? You know, thirds and that. So you're going to put that flower in the top third of the frame, a stem under it, and then you're going to somehow get yourself a nice clean background, whether you're using a background or, you know, working it out so you can blur out that background, but you're gonna produce an image like that of that flower. See, the problem is that is the most boring way you can photograph a flower. I mean, it's really just documenting the flower. You haven't created anything artistic with it. And it's been done like that a billion times. I mean, everybody photographs the flower the exact same way. So you're not creating anything that's different from what everybody else is doing. And that's what you want to do with your flower photography is you want to stand out from everybody else. You don't want to shoot things that look like what everybody else has shot. Now, I'm not telling you you shouldn't shoot this image right here. I've got that image. I shot it. And I've got all kinds of images of flowers in the top third with a stem under it. I've got them all. But here's the thing. Once I've captured that flower and I've captured that boring shot of it, I don't keep repeating it over and over and over again like some people do. So I was at Duke University in North Carolina there, and I went over there on a Monday after my workshop. One of the ladies in the workshop was going there to photograph the tulips. She's all excited. So she had her tripod down on this little pathway. You can see this pathway up in the upper right. She had it all the way down to the ground, low as she could get it down there, and she's got that tulip framed up in her camera. And she says, "Hey, Mike, would you mind looking through my viewfinder and tell me what you think of this shot I got set up right here?" So what do I see when I look through a viewfinder? Yeah, that boring shot of a tulip. So I said to her, I said, "Susan, how many times have you seen that tulip shot and framed exactly like you just framed it?" She goes, "Well, I've seen it a lot like that." I go, "Yeah." I says, "Everybody does it that way." I says, it's been done to death." I says, "You probably already have a tulip shot with the same framing on your hard drive at home, right?" She goes, "Yeah, I do." I says, "So if you've already accomplished that shot, why are you repeating it? You should be looking for something else a little different here than just shooting that tulip." So I said, "I'm going to look for some other things here to photograph." I says, "Because I'm not interested. I've got that boring tulip shot already, so I'm not going to do that." So as I'm looking through this little patch of tulips, because there wasn't a big area, it was just a small area, I happened to find this really nice little composition, and I set up my camera, framed it up, and I says, "Look through my viewfinder and tell me if you've ever seen a shot like this before." And she looks through and she says, "Nope, never seen a shot like that before." So I found this one where it had this tulip that was encased. It's kind of like cradled in that green sheathing behind it there. And then down below, perfectly positioned, were two leaves that were going in opposite direction. It was the perfect little composition sitting there waiting to be photographed. So she's willing to do a boring shot of that tulip, and I'm looking for something that's going to stand out. It's going to look a little different from what everybody else would be shooting there. And that's what you're looking for. That's what you want to find is the unique character, and that's what we're going to cover right now, finding character in nature. So when we go out there, we want to look for those subjects that are a little bit unique, a little bit different from the rest of the species, whatever flower that is. And so is it going to be easy to find them? No, it's not easy to find them because there's not a lot of them out there, but you have to have the mindset to look for them. You have to always be thinking that way. You have to be thinking in the terms of I'm looking for the character in these flowers. Now, where do you find them? You find them in the woods, you find them in the fields, and I find them at the grocery store in the flower department. I'll show you some that I found there. But we're going to be always searching. The same with when I was in that Duke University. I'm looking for characters. Susan's looking to shoot the boring shot of the tulip. So this is a documentation, Black-Eyed Susan. Nothing artistic here, just showing you what the flower looks like. It's got textured head, dark textured head with evenly spaced petals all the way around the head. 99.9% of them look like that. And when I go into the field where the Black-Eyed Susans are standing, I'm not going to shoot any more of the boring flower shots because I've already got the boring flower shot. I'm looking for something that's a little unique or different, or I'm not going to shoot anything. So on this one morning, I'm out there and I happen to find this one right down here, kind of like center right there. And I notice that two of the petals on there are going in the opposite direction of all the other petals. So that's different. That sets it apart. So I get my camera down there, set it up, frame it up, and I end up with that shot right there. So you can see two of the petals on that flower are going in the opposite direction of all the other petals. And then down here, I've got a petal that is hugging the petal next to it. So that is a unique black-eyed Susan. That's got the character I'm looking for. See, because again, I don't want to shoot the boring shot of it. I want to find something that's going to make my shot of a black-eyed Susan look different from what everybody else is shooting. Now, when you find a character, okay, you want to make sure you shoot a lot of different compositions because see, that flower doesn't last long and it's gone. It's dead and gone. It can never be photographed again. So I make sure that while I'm there, I shoot a lot of different compositions. So this happens to be my favorite, a vertical. And then I did a horizontal, just come in a little closer, different angle, and another vertical, but in a little closer. So you want to shoot a lot of different angles, a lot of different compositions, because again, this doesn't exist anymore. You can't go back and reshoot it again. So make sure while you're there, you got your tripod set up, shoot a lot of compositions. This is a purple cone flower. We got a big field of purple cone flowers at one of the parks that I go to. Again, um, textured center, evenly spaced petals all the way around it. You know, that's what they look like. 99% of them look like that. But when I go into the field, again, I already have my boring shot of it. So I'm not going to revisit that type of a shot. I want to walk through the field and I will literally walk through the whole field searching out anything unique or any type of character. And on this one morning, I'm walking through the field and I come across that one right there. So that is a very unique purple coneflower, has a seed head, this seed head that grew right next to it, and one of the petals reaches out and gives it a hug. How cool is that? And if you notice the petals below, there's an artistic flow in the petals. They're not just hanging straight down like all the others. There is an artistic flow has been created in those petals. And then I get a bonus. I got a bug on one of the petals. How amazing. All right. So now some people wonder, why did you crop off part of the head here and some of the other petals out here? Well, the reason why I do that is because I like to fill the frame with the most interesting part of what I'm photographing. And what I find is the most interesting part is right here, this petal that's hugging the seed head, the flow of the petals here, the bug, all this is the most interesting part right in here. So I want to fill the frame with that. So when your eye goes to this image, the most interesting part fills the frame as much as possible. Now, if I was to bring the frame out farther on the left here to capture the rest of the head and maybe some more petals on the left, then the most interesting part would shrink down into the frame a little bit. So I'm blowing up whatever I find is the most interesting to fill the frame. Now here's a purple coneflower. The coneflower is nothing unique, but it's the vine that grew around the stem of the coneflower and right straight through up to the top there. So the vine is what makes it, have that character that I'm looking for, some uniqueness to that flower, because you just don't see flowers with vines growing around them. At least I've only found two all the years I've been shooting these purple cone flowers. So that makes it unique. I'm at the grocery store flower department where I've been shooting flowers from that store for years and years and years and years. And I would do workshops where I would bring flowers into the workshops and I would go to that store and I would pick up flowers before a workshop. And I'd been buying Gerber daisies there for 20 years. Okay. They would always have one stem and one head on every Gerber daisy, but on this particular day, I found two stems fused together with two heads coming off of it. So that's unique. That has character. That is a shot of something that you don't generally see anybody producing because it's rare to find a two-headed Gerber daisy. Now, again, I've cropped it tight because I want your eye to go to this area right in here where the two stems fuse together with the two sepals here, right in here. So that's why I eliminated any petals way out to here on the right and petals way out to the left, because again, that would shrink down what I want you to see uh, and be smaller in the frame. So I wanted to make sure you see the most interesting part, at least what I found the most interesting part. Now, I was also at that same store with the same flower department, and they have tulips that it came in the springtime. They have about 50 pots of tulips laying on the ground. And I'm going through looking at every single pot, and every tulip looks the same. They're all just a standard, typical looking tulip. But when I get to this pot, one of the tulips, the petal is drooped down, is laying down like that, and there's a green leaf perfectly aligned to capture it as it's falling. And I thought, what are the chances out of all these tulips, one of them has a petal that falls, and there's a green leaf perfectly aligned to catch it as it's falling. So I buy this, take it home, set it up in my home, photograph it right in my home with one of my backgrounds, and there it is. That's exactly the way it was formed, sitting in that pot. I just brought it home, set it up, put a background behind it and photographed it. Cut off the top of the tulip because I don't care about the top of the tulip. What I care about is this right in here. That's the most interesting part. And so again, fill in the frame with that area right there. This little light, you might think that I put a light there. That is not a light. That is just shot with natural light, but I added the light in post-processing. I kind of created a little spotlight there. Remember what I told you about shooting lots of different compositions? Well, I did that same thing with that flower because, again, that thing is dead and in a landfill somewhere. It doesn't exist. So make sure you shoot a lot of compositions. Now, that happened to be my favorite is the horizontal version, but this was the vertical version. Looks totally different. Flower, everything looks totally different. So that's why I say, you know, a lot of different compositions you want to shoot because you're going to get totally different looks at every angle you come at it. Also, I always make sure that I shoot my flowers all the way through the whole life cycle, even to the where they're basically dying or almost death, because you never know if you're going to find something interesting. Again, same flower, petals are all drooping down. Same flower right here being caught by that green leaf right there, still positioned, catching that. And then I just put a white background behind this one. Lupin, as you can see, they grow straight up in the air. All the lupin on Madeline Island, there's millions of them on Madeline Island. We do the workshop there. They all grow straight up in the air. And they're beautiful flowers. All right. That's typically what you see, and that's what people photograph. Lupin going straight up in the air. But I'm not interested in lupin going straight up in the air because, again, everybody's got those shots. I'm looking for something that's different. All right. I want something that those flowers are doing some different angles or curves or something. So here's one that was really cool shot of a lupin that is flower bent underneath this leaf here, the leaves, and then grew straight up. So you've got this beautiful little L shape here to that lupin. And again, totally different than all the other lupins. So if we had a lupin contest and you got your straight one and I've got my bent one, chances are I'm going to, you know, draw some attention from the judges because I've found something that's unique and has that character. There's another one. You can see the lupin grew and then totally reversed itself and went the opposite direction. So again, that's what I'm looking for, the characters. There's another one, put my background behind it. There's the crop version. You can see the lupin just kind of dipped down and then drew straight up. Totally different than all the other lupin. That's what you're looking for. You want that character. And then one of the students last June, I've been shooting there for 8 years, never ever seen a two-headed lupin. And one of the students came across this and showed it to me. I was so excited when she found it. Because again, there's one stem, but two heads coming off that stem. So again, very unique lupin. That's what you're looking for. Gerber daisies, look at that little tiny petal there. All the Gerber daisies, the petals are usually about 3 inches long, 2.5, 3 inches long. And then all of a sudden there's this little 1 inch long petal. So again, that's unique. That's different. Black-eyed Susan covered in heavy frost. Most people have, you know, black-eyed Susan with no frost. I've got one with heavy frost on it. And so that frost is the character that makes that image special, okay? Because if you remove that frost, if you take that frost and remove it from that, all you really have is just a simple close-up of a black-eyed Susan. It'd be okay, but nothing special. The frost is what makes that thing really special. Here's a very unique dahlia, was shot at the Chicago Botanical Garden, and you can see it's got lots of little curves and all kinds of neat petals going in all different directions. So again, that is a very unique dahlia. They don't look like that typically, so that's very unique. Now, up in here, I liked all these little curls that were happening up in here, so I just moved in closer and shot the curls. And so you got all this really unique formations that are happening in that flower. And this one here is another one that has all kinds of cool stuff going on. The petals are going in all different curly shapes and designs and very interesting. This was actually shot with my phone. I photographed this with my Samsung S23 phone and captured that image with the phone. So even with your phone, you can do some great flower photography. Flower backside. So everybody's shooting the front side. Why not shoot the backside? You know, with your flower photography, you should have a lot of different styles. You know, not just the boring shot like I showed you earlier. You want to have a lot of different styles in your portfolio of flowers if you want to stand out. So shoot some backsides. Now, I was out one spring, dogwood bushes were starting to leaf out. You could see a couple flowers just kind of popped out here. Most people are shooting the front. That's the front side of the flower. I'm shooting the backside because I thought the backside looked pretty cool. And there it is. It's got these beautiful green leaves, got the white of the flower, and I used the background behind it, as you can see, to clean that background up. But yeah, a lot of backgrounds are good. This is the front side of a Trillium. Most people are shooting the front side. Why not shoot the back side? Sometimes you get some cool abstracts shooting the back sides. This is a wild geranium. Beautiful flower on the back side. Really nice pattern of that green against the purple. Most people shooting Gerber daisies from the front side. You get some beautiful shots from the back side. They have a really nice backside to them. And again, these are images that you're going to show people. They're going to say, oh, wow, it's a cool way to shoot it. Never seen it that way. This is another two-headed Gerber daisy. I've actually found three in the 20 years that I've been buying Gerber daisies. I found three two-headed Gerber daisies. This is the second one here. And there's actually two heads coming off those two few stems. Just shot it from the backside. Dahlias, everybody's shooting the dahlias from the front side. They really have a cool backside to them. Very interesting design in the backside, and nobody's photographing them. This is some dahlias that I had down in the bottom here in my yard in a pot, and there was a backside of this one here that I thought was pretty cool. The way the petals are actually kind of going the opposite direction of what they normally do. Fill the frame. This is another way to photograph where you can eliminate the problems of clutter by getting in close and filling the frame with the subject. All right, so I post images on about 6 or 7 different flower groups on Facebook, and I share my images on those groups. And this is one that I posted after I shot this. I posted it on this one flower group, and I got this really nice comment that I liked, and I copied it here. And this lady she goes, I like it. It's different. Not the same single flower surrounded by a fuzzy, out of focus background. You know what I'm talking about when she mentions that, right? It says that. It's the boring flower shot with the out of focus background. It's that single flower shot with the one single flower with an out of focus background. Everybody's doing it. That's why she said, I like it. It's different because we're getting in there. We're showing off all that fine details of that sunflower, all the petals with all the lines in the petals, all that really nice artistic design of that flowers fill in the frame. And she says, I like it. It's different. So you can get in really close to your flowers, zoom in close and fill the frame with them. And then what happens when you do that is you don't have to worry about the background. You don't have to worry about having a background. You just get in there real close. This is a hibiscus shot at Longwood Gardens outside of Philadelphia. Every time I share this on any of those flower groups, I always get, somebody saying, well, they always ask me, they go, did you focus stack that? And I go, no, I don't focus stack. Never focus stack. I shoot everything at f32 and sharpen the image in post-processing for the diffraction. And I get nice sharp quality with everything in focus. This is a ranunculus flower shot at that Duke University when we were there shooting tulips. And again, got in real close on it, filled the frame, no outside distraction backgrounds. Here's a rose, picked it up at the flower department at the grocery store. Beautiful rose, brought it home, set it up in my house, filled the frame with it. This is a black-eyed Susan, kind of odd looking, but it is a black-eyed Susan. Fill the frame. And tulips. Now, tulips, when you have all the petals around it, you can't really shoot down over, from the top going down because you wouldn't be able to get the side view of all that stuff. If you pull one of the petals off, you can photograph into the side of the flower and see all the inside of it. Just pull one petal off. This is a rose, Chicago Botanical Garden. Did a little post-processing to create that nice look on it. And another dahlia with some interesting petals, but again, fill in the frame. Now, let's say you can't get in and fill the frame. The great thing about these cameras we have, most of you have newer cameras, they all are at least 24, 26 megapixels. So I don't have a big problem with shooting a larger area and then cropping out what I want in post-processing. So I don't really get too fussy on my cropping when I'm shooting the subject. I'll generally shoot a larger area and then crop out what I want in post-processing. So that's the nice thing about the larger megapixel cameras. Soft focus. This is a style that most people like to do with lens baby lenses. Matter of fact, the two ladies I mentioned, Kathleen Clemens and Jackie Kramer, that are teaching that workshop in June with me on Madeline Island, they do lens baby photography, and so they use one of these. I had done some Lens Baby years ago. I was actually one of their ambassadors for a while. And I used the Lens Baby and produced images like this. What it is just soft focus flower photography. It's more like what you would think of you're in a dream and you're looking at this flower and it's all soft and everything. It's a very popular style amongst flower photographers to do soft focus like this. And Kathleen and Jackie and Ann Belmont and Jerry Jones and Andrea Gillette, they all do this Lens Baby and they have big followings from people that love that style. Now I've found that I can kind of get the same look with my standard macro lens shooting at the smallest f-stop, 2.8. You'll get a very shallow depth of field shooting at that 2.8 when you're in really close to your flower. So this was shot with my standard 90 millimeter Tamron macro lens, just shot with the smallest f-stop, 2.8. And what I do is I shoot into the side of the flowers, not the front, facing the flower, but into the side of the flower. And I'll focus on one of the petals, any of the petals, maybe this one or this one, that is closest to the front of my lens. And that's where I place my focus, on that petal that is closest to the front of my lens from that flower. And that 2.8 f-stop will give me just an eighth of an inch, maybe you might get lucky, get a quarter inch, but more likely about an eighth of an inch in focus, and then it'll soften out the flower petals and blur out the background completely in the background. So here's another example shooting into the side of the flower. All right. I don't even need a background behind this because at 2.8, you're going to blur that stairs to a solid white color. So I'm going to focus on the tips right up here on the front tips that are closest to the front of my lens. And when I do that, I end up with very little of those tips in focus, very little. Like I say, about an eighth of an inch. And then you can see it softens the flower down and blurs out the stairs in the background. So I have lots of shots of these flowers shooting in the side. This is a Himalayan blue poppy at Longwood Gardens. And now the reason why I place my focus in the foreground, the foreground closest to my lens, is because when someone views this image, their eye is searching around looking for something in focus. Okay, you just wanted everything all blurred out. So looking for something in focus. Now, if it's in the foreground, it's easy to spot the point of focus. So that's why I focused here. Now I used a little higher f-stop here, maybe an f4.5, because you see there's a little more than an eighth of an inch of this in focus here. But you can see how well it softened down the petals, and then anything in the background is just going to be a solid blur back there. Now let's say I change the focus point, just to give you an example of why I put it in the foreground. If I change the focus point to the center part of the flowers back here, watch what happens to those petals in the foreground. Oh, wow, just a big old mass of blur in the foreground. See, I don't find that appealing, looking at a big blur in the foreground. Looking through that blur to find the area in the back that's in focus back here. So that's why I'm focused in the foreground. So that's where your focus point, and then let it soften down into the background. Another one here, there's the tip right there. You can see it, that's closest to the front of my lens. That's what's in focus. Look at the softness, beautiful softness, and then the flowers that are in the background just blur into colors. Another one here, again, right in these tips here, and then a real nice, soft, dreamlike look throughout the rest of it. All right, lighting. Now, I don't use any lighting, no flash systems. I only use natural light, and I don't care if I'm outdoors in the woods, dark woods, if I'm out in sunny conditions, if I'm in my house shooting, inside a botanical garden, I'm only using whatever light is available. I use no flash systems or anything like that, just natural light. Makes it so much easier just using the natural light that's already there than messing around with light systems and using flashes and all that. All right, so I do use sunlight backlighting for special effect. So early morning, you got to be out there at daybreak, right when the sun is coming up over the horizon or the tree line, just as it's peeking over there. And when that sun has a low angle, it is coming across that field that you're in, that open field with all the flowers. It's coming across that field and it's backlighting the subject you're going to photograph. So this is a young moth mullein flower, And this is in the budding stage. This is just a young one that's got buds on it. These little things here are just buds, but those will open up into white flowers. There'll be white flowers all around that stem. But with the sun backlighting that, you can see all the tiny little hairs all around the buds and all around the stems, all the tiny little hairs that are growing on that plant, and they're being highlighted. So it's kind of what I call rim lighting. So you got this nice rim lighting around all of the subject there, created by the sun, which is behind it. Now, obviously, you don't want the sun directly behind it because you would have this big old white hot spot on there. So the sun is up high enough where it's out of your way when you're shooting it, but it's coming down at a slight angle, but yet still highlighting all those hairs. Now, another day, I was out shooting in the field with black-eyed Susan. Here's one that's in the budding stage. Again, the flower hasn't opened up yet, but it's got thousands of little tiny hairs on the leaves and on the stems here and all around here. And again, that's all being backlit by the sun. Flowers, same thing. If you get the sun behind your flowers, you'll get some kind of like folds in the petals, little creases and stuff, and you get different shading, some dark colors and light colors and all kinds of different shading going on. That was just in a pot on my porch, and I opened up the blinds in the morning. The sun was just over the houses behind me, and that flower was just kind of glowing there with that sun coming through those petals. Here's a bladder campion with dew on it, early morning dew, and you can see all around the outside the rim lighting from the dew being lit up and around the stem and the buds and that, and down here, uh, all being backlit by the sun. This is a fun thing to do. Go into your home, darken down a room, one of the rooms in your house, darken it down, get a tulip or any type of a trumpeted type flower that you can shine a flashlight inside. So I've got a flashlight that I'm shining inside of that tulip. And with the room darkened down, you will see a glow on the back side of that tulip, as you see here. So the room has to be darkened down because if the room was really bright, you wouldn't be able to see the glow on the tulip. But when you darken that room down, take that flashlight, shine it inside of that tulip, and that outside, that backside, like you see, will just glow, and it produces a really cool image. Now this looks like sunlight backlighting the teasel, but no, that was just a standard teasel shot. No highlighting like that, but I did it in post-processing. In the program I use called Smart Photo Editor, it has a filter that actually creates that rim lighting on the subject. So that was done with post-processing. So that's another option. Getting down low and shooting up at your flowers. So here's some black-eyed Susans. I just got the camera down low and shot up underneath them towards the sky. So you can do that too, just a different angle, different effect. Rule of threes. So you may have heard that rule. You're supposed to shoot in threes or uneven numbers, 1, 3, 5, rather than 2, 4. You want uneven numbers because it's supposed to be more appealing, but sometimes you can't always find three. So I put these three flowers on the oak leaves in the fall when they fell and it rained that night. So I've got three flowers there. I actually found this potted plant. This is a columbine flowers in a pot, exactly like you see it there. I didn't do anything. I didn't arrange that. It was actually arranged just like you see it right in the pot. But there's three flowers, so that's good, right? The rule of threes. But I don't really follow that very often because most of the time I don't find threes, I find twos. But I don't have any problem with twos. There's two flowers, looks nice. Two columbine, two flowers, two flowers. I've got tons of two flowers that look really good. So I don't really go by that rule of threes because I've got way more twos, and so I don't really pay much attention to that rule. So shoot twos all day long. They work great. Natural flower vase. So most of us take flowers and they put it in a glass vase, right? Matter of fact, I just had some flowers that I bought, and after I got done photographing, my wife put them in a vase. So most of us use a glass vase or some kind of vase to put our flowers in, but I'm looking for a natural flower vase out in nature. So what I learned years ago, this is like 20 years, 20 some years ago, I learned that a lot of these old tree trunks out in the woods have holes in them, cavities. And so what I would do is I would go ahead and search out these tree trunks, and you can see I'm pointing at this hole right there. And I'd bring some flowers with me or find some flowers in the area. And then I would insert them into that hole, and that tree trunk would become a natural vase for my flowers. So now when you photograph them, you want to leave some of the hole showing. Okay, so like this here, you want to leave a little bit of the hole showing. Because if you don't, if you cover the whole thing up with flowers, then it just looks like flowers laying on top of a tree trunk. You want the hole to show so that people will think, wow, did those flowers grow out of that hole? Here's a really nice stump that I found. This is actually the very first stump that I found that had a hole in it. So this cavity right here, I found this old stump and I was going to actually photograph it just as you see it without the flowers. And then it dawned on me, I thought, hey, why not put something in that hole, to make it look a little more interesting than just a hole. So again, I put these flowers in there and left a little bit of the hole showing so you can see there is a hole there and that those flowers are coming out of that hole. So again, a natural flower base. And here's another cavity that I found in an old tree trunk, and I put these flowers down in that area. That looks like tulips in there, and you're probably thinking that's a pretty big area, but you'd be wrong. That's actually a very small area. And it took me 4 months to find a small enough flower to fit in there. Those are called orange stars, and they're only 3/4 of an inch tall. 3/4 of an inch tall. That's it. That's how tiny those are. Those are actually in the budding stage. They're in the budding stage right now. And then when they open up, they're a kind of a flat flower when they open up. So that worked perfect for that tree trunk there. Now I did a vertical there, but I did another one with a horizontal. Looks totally different. Totally different. Used a different flower in there and also warmed up the tone in the wood. Notice how the wood has a warmer feel? Whereas look at here, that's the natural look of the wood, kind of a gray color. But then I warmed it up in post-processing and used a little different flower there and did a horizontal version of that. Help out a plain flower image. So let's say you have those boring flower shots that I was talking about, and you've got that just big old solid color background I put back there, and you want to kind of make it a little bit more artistic looking, right? More like maybe a painting or something. Well, in a program I use, Smart Photo Editor, and of course with Topaz programs, Nik software, they all have filters, and you can actually buy filters and overlay them on things. There's people that sell filters, pre-made filters. But I'll use these filters to add a little bit something to the background, make it a little bit more interesting, or maybe like a painting. And then you can take your boring flower shot and make it a little bit more interesting with some kind of a creative background behind it. This one here is my boring tulip shot with a crackled finish over top of it. Smart Photo Editor has over 8,000 creative filters. And so that's one with a crackled finish. And I've used that on some of my boring flower shots to make them a little bit more artistic. And this is a common mullion. I had a white background with me that day. Um, and I just added this creative filter over top to kind of make the background look a little more interesting than just white. So you can do all kinds of really creative filters, make your image look more artistic. So that's a fun thing too. This one here, I photographed this dahlia because I like this little curly thing here. See that little curly guy? Remember I was talking about looking for character? I find that is the little bit of character there. And what I did was I used a filter in Smart Photo Editor that reflects one side onto the other side. So dead flowers is another one. See, we're in wintertime here, and I will actually go out into the fields where there were flowers growing in the fields in the summertime, and there are dead heads sitting out there, dead flower heads that are out there. And you can sometimes get some pretty interesting images. And again, with a little post-processing skills, you can kind of dress them up a little bit to make them more interesting. So here's a purple coneflower right here, and you can see it's not in too good a shape anymore. And I just used a kind of a rustic vignette, white vignette around here, just to make it look a little bit more artsy. This is some, I think these were zinnias, and backside of one, side view of the other one. And again, uh, dead, but different look. Again, just adding another look to your portfolio of flowers. And this is a dead sunflower. laying on the it was laying over and it was almost touching the ground there, and I just cropped out one area out of that backside. And you can find all kinds of interesting patterns and designs in these dead flowers. You can photograph and have fun in the wintertime. So I'm going to try to get out actually in the next couple weeks and find some more of these dead ones to photograph. Because again, outside there's nothing else to shoot flower wise. So and you can only stand so much shooting indoors. All right, so I had started a flower photography club online on January 2nd of this year, and we are on January 19th, and we now have about 420 paid members in just 19 days. Um, the club is designed so it'll be an online program, just like I'm doing an online program for you. Every month we will have a guest speaker come in and talk about their style of photography, flower photography. I've got all kinds of connections with speakers from when I would be out on the circuit there doing conferences, and also my 7 or 8 years that I did my macro photo conference. I had speakers come in. So all these people have agreed to do a program for me for my new flower photography club. We also have our own personal Facebook group where only our members can join and share their images there and ask questions and that. All our monthly meetings will be recorded, just like this one's being recorded, and then all the videos will be stored so that all the members will have access to all the videos of all the meetings. If you're interested, just go to my website, which is mikemoats.com, and look at the top section of the website. You'll see links up there. Just look for the one that says Flower Photography Club. Click on that. It'll give you a lot more information about the club than what I've just given you, and then it'll give you a page where you can go to sign up. So, if you're interested. All right, I am finished my little program here, and I will stop my share here so that we can ask questions. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to hang out and answer them.
Mike, a quick
Yeah,
question
Highness.
for you, well, a couple actually.
Okay.
What are some of the gardens around Atlanta that you enjoy? Or you just an
Um,
open field guy?
I'm generally I like well I do like I've been to a ton of botanical gardens all over the country because every time I'd go to a workshop somewhere, a conference, I'd find gardens in that area. So I've been to lots and lots of gardens all over the country. In Atlanta, I've been to Gibbs Garden. I have not been to the Atlanta Botanical Garden, which I hear is really good, but I just never was there at the time when the flowers were out. I was usually there too early in the spring or too late in the fall, and so I never got to go there. But I have been to Gibbs a couple of times when I would go to Old Car City to do workshops. I would venture over to Gibbs, which wasn't too far from Old Car City. But other than that, that would be the only one in the Atlanta area.
Which of the software programs, photo editors, have the filters that you seem to enjoy the most?
It's called Smart Photo Editor, and you better write that down because you won't remember once well, you'll have the video, so you'll be able to see in the video. But Smart Photo Editor is it's an amazing program with, like I say, there's over 8,000 filters in it, and it costs $29. So that's I'm a professional doing this, and I don't use Photoshop, I don't use Lightroom. I'm using Smart Photo Editor. It cost me 29 bucks 5 years ago, and it's still $29 today, 5 years later. Just a fantastic program. Now, if you look it up, do a Google search and you'll look it up. It won't come up on the very top search or the second or third. It might be about the fourth or fifth down in the search, but it's listed under Anthropics. Anthropics is the name of the company. And then after the word Anthropics, you'll see Smart Photo Editor. When you click on that link, it'll actually take you to Smart Photo Editor. And we just looked it up the other day. It's still listed at $59 on sale for $29, half off.
Ah,
Now, that is a standalone program, but you can buy it as a plugin for Photoshop or Lightroom, I believe. But it costs you a little more. It's $49 if you get it as a plugin. But all those filters that you see on my images, all my images, they're all processed with that program, and you saw how they come out. They'll come out really nice.